Welcome to the Chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 15 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at @halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. You've seen him on the Tough Cover Pod. It is Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at @MarkHenryJr_. Mark, how are you doing today?
I'm excited. Feels like this week has gone on forever, but we're getting closer to football. Thursday night football tonight, Saturday college, Sunday NFL. It makes the week at least a little more palatable to get to these markers with football in the fall.
Yeah, no matter how, I think we picked a good music opening for our show, because no matter how I come into the show feeling about the Eagles, when the bass drops in the middle of our intro, I'm just ready to go. I'm ready to go run through a wall or beat my head against a wall or talk about Eagles football, So we're going to get into that. We got a great show lined up for you guys today. We're going to break down all the Week 5 storylines to get you ready for the games, including tonight's game, which a lot of times we don't get to because a lot of times we record after Thursday night football. But before we get there, this podcast is going out live on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. So wherever you're watching, drop us a comment. We'd love to interact with you guys live on the show here. It's also going to be uploaded to Apple Podcasts. So please follow, rate, and review us there. And we've got Dives, Mr. Crockpot, chiming in already on YouTube, says, "Let's go Birds." And I am here for it. And so let's kick off our discussion of the Eagles game against the Chiefs. And so not the Chiefs. I did not update that part of my notes. The Eagles game against the Panthers. I updated everything else except who we were playing. So injury report. Lane Johnson did not. Now this is as of Wednesday. Did not practice. Still has this mysterious personal matter. I believe I saw that he was headed back to Philly from Oklahoma. And regardless of the fact that I'm from Oklahoma, guys, I don't know what's going on. So you don't have to keep asking me on Twitter. It is a larger state than you think. Okay, so Lane Johnson has the personal matter going on. It's unclear if he's going to play. I would assume since he's headed back to Philly, he will, but I don't know. And Jordan Mailata was limited in practice. On the Panthers side, Christian McCaffrey was limited, and tackle Cameron Irving and linebacker Shaq Thompson did not participate. We got Caleb chiming in on Facebook, says the Eagles need to win this game. And absolutely. And we're going to get into, is this a must-win game for the Eagles? But let's just kick it off there. Mark, is this a must-win game for the Eagles?
Depends on what you mean by that. It depends on what must-win for what. I mean, it's kind of hard to determine what the actual goal is of this year right now. If you're saying to make the playoffs, to win 10 games, to win 9 games, yeah, definitely a must-win. For me, to get to 8-9 wins maybe and compete and whatever that is at the end of the season, I think we have to win one of the next 3. And that might sound defeatist, but you look at the schedule and it's pretty tough with Carolina, Tampa Bay, and the Raiders. 3 pretty good teams. Obviously, one really good team that just won the Super Bowl, which I'm kind of chalking up as a loss already. So really, you have to win one of the Carolina and the Raiders game. And obviously, it goes without saying that if you win the Carolina game, it gives you a chance to win 2 of those 3. And if they can escape this brutal first 7 games at a 3-4 record, then I actually am feeling pretty optimistic about. I'm sure at that point I would feel pretty optimistic about where this team's at. So, yeah, in a lot of ways, this could be a must-win game, and it's really weird. This is not a gambling show, but it's really weird in terms of what the line movement has been on this game. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey in the injury report. Christian McCaffrey, to me, made me very nervous when it seems like he's very much trending towards playing. All the fantasy sites have projected him to be playing at this point. So that sucks for the Eagles. I mean, no one's rooting for injury. No one wants guys to be hurt, but it completely changes that Carolina offense. And we saw the last 2 weeks in crunch time in those games, more so the Dallas game early on when that was still a game. The offense is not the same without Christian McCaffrey. This guy just does it all for the Panthers, whether that be catch the ball, run the ball, whatever it is. And he makes a lot of plays. And, if he's going to play, I'm sure he's fully up to strength. I'm sure they're not going to play a guy that important that makes that much money if he's like 50-50. So that makes me really nervous. But this line opened at Carolina -4.5 when it seemed like McCaffrey wasn't playing at the beginning of the week, Sunday or Monday. It then moved down to 3.5. It seemed like the sharp money, the Vegas money was coming in on the Eagles, even though the public seems to love the Panthers in this game. But now, even after the McCaffrey news, this line is down to -3, trending towards -2.5, which basically means if this line's at -3, that they think that this is an even game on neutral field because it's a 6-point swing either way. That means if it was in Philadelphia, they'd be favored by 3 points in this game. When I heard the McCaffrey news, I freaked out. I didn't want to bet the Eagles. It made me nervous, especially with our defensive woes the last couple of weeks, which we'll get into specifically. But it's not appearing to make Vegas too nervous. It's not appearing to make gamblers too nervous. And that's interesting to me. It is always interesting to see. I mean, 72% of the bets are on the Panthers, but over 50% of the money is on the Eagles. So that says a lot. And it says that some of the smart money is coming in on the Eagles. And that makes me feel a little better because post McCaffrey news, I was feeling pretty grim about our chances to win the game.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, the biggest bonuses if Christian McCaffrey doesn't play, my camera's lagging out and I'm not sure why, but I'm going to talk through it anyways. One of the biggest wins for the Eagles if McCaffrey doesn't play is just that I feel like it opens this defense up to play a little bit more man coverage. We're not facing a team that has a great tight end, but McCaffrey scares you to death. Really in the passing game. And if he's got to be replaced with Chuba Hubbard, that's not as scary. I think it lets the Eagles get into some more man coverage looks. I mean, the Panthers don't have that tight end. If McCaffrey doesn't play, then they don't have multiple receivers scared of. I mean, they've got DJ Moore who's playing really well, but put Slay on him and see what he can do. I mean, Slay's been talking on Twitter about how great he's been playing. Stick him on DJ Moore and let's see here, because what the Eagles have been doing on defense, it has not been working. And so I'd like to see us try to get a little more aggressive, maybe blitz a little more, play some man coverage. But I think that only works really if McCaffrey's not playing, because we don't have a linebacker or safety that could cover him out of the backfield. Particularly since Darnold really started to struggle in the second half of the Cowboys game when they started to blitz him. And so I'd like to see the Eagles utilize that, get in some man coverage, make him make the right reads. And I'm just not sure Darnold can do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but Christian McCaffrey out there helps that a lot because you'd always have that dump off option and you're always going to have him open unless you focus a ton of attention to him. And if that's the case, you're letting DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson run free kind of. So it is really, it makes them a whole different team with McCaffrey out there. So that's definitely going to be something to pay attention to. It seems like he's playing, but that's the X factor for me. Is McCaffrey fully healthy? Is he getting a full workload? Are they using him the same way they were using him the first 2 or 3 weeks, which was their entire offense? I mean, the percentage of touches he was getting was pretty outrageous. And I mean, that goes back the last couple of years. So that'll be something to watch for. And I mean, this is a prove-it game for the defense. I mean, I guess we can just start there. I mean, obviously the last 2 weeks giving up 41 and 42 points and not getting a punt last week, only getting 1 turnover in the last. I mean, was that their first turnover last week, right?
I think they had 1 before that.
I could be wrong. I know they didn't the first 2 weeks. They might have against Dallas, but
yeah.
They haven't created turnovers. Fletcher Cox hasn't been himself. He hasn't even been attracting the doubles that he used to. I know Javon Hargrave has been great. Josh Sweat made some bonehead plays last week. Derek Barnett is a bonehead play in himself. Like he can't help himself. He has to make one in the first half of the game usually. There's a lot of problems on this defense. And like you said, are we going to see Darius Slay step up at like his mouth is on Twitter? I mean, that's going to be a big thing to watch for against DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson, whoever they put him on. I'm nervous about the defensive side of the ball. I think it'd be hard not to be at this point with what we've seen the last 2 weeks and what we know we have personnel wise at linebacker and safety, which you've talked about, a ton of times. So that's always going to be the concern. And against a team that either has an elite tight end or either has a running back that can catch passes like McCaffrey, that's always going to be a problem. So that's going to be the thing to watch out for. And I'm curious to see how this defense responds after, they have really been killed all week, and Gannon's been killed all week, and rightfully so. So are you able to step up against the offense that's been really good, but not quite as good as the last two you've sucked against?
Yeah, Caleb says we need some more runs. I'm going to get to that in just a second. Before we flip over to the offense, I just want to, on the defense, the Carolina offensive line's not that good. They've got Taylor Moton, but outside of that, they're fine. It's not a great offensive line. Unfortunately, we're face to face with the reality that the Eagles' defensive line is nothing special either. Hopefully Javon Hargrave continues to make plays the way he has. Hopefully Josh Sweat continues to play well. Josh Sweat was responsible for that interception against the Chiefs. He had pressure all in the face of Patrick Mahomes. Hopefully those guys continue to step up, and, hopefully Fletcher Cox shows up this week and makes a play. He's about as invisible as Ryan Kerrigan is so far. And, I saw, he said the quote about, with these multiple fronts, it's just hard to send. So I don't know the context in which he said that, but I'm tired of hearing excuses. Like, Javon Hargrave is playing right, a lot less money, moving around all over the place, and he's making impacts. And so for your play on 1-3 team is right. I'm tired of hearing these guys on Twitter defending themselves when, the team is just a dumpster fire on defense. So hopefully this is the day that the defense picks it up. Hopefully Darnold can be pressured into some mistakes, and we see a rebound performance from the defense.
Yeah, I mean that's going to be the big step to watch for, because obviously the offense, there was obviously its problems against San Francisco and even more so against Dallas, but yeah, the offense looked good against Kansas City. I mean, we talked about that on the review show, and we talked about the run pass ratio, and I'm sure you'll get more into that, but the offense looked good. So if the offense can repeat a similar performance, hopefully not as many touchdowns negated by penalties, hopefully not as many penalties in general, hopefully not as many missed opportunities and field goals in the red zone. But the offense moved the ball, and I think they'll be able to move the ball again. Carolina's defense, while it was really good against teams like the Jets and the Texans, did not look quite as good against the Panthers, and they only looked slightly worse or against the Cowboys, I should say. They only looked slightly worse than our defenses did against the Cowboys. So I'm not quite as afraid of the Panthers defense as everyone else seems to be. I mean, this, again, not a gambling show. I love the over in this game. I think this is actually going to be a game where both teams move the ball pretty efficiently. Both teams score. I think it's going to be like a 34-31 game, 31-30, something like that, really close. I'm not even sure which way I think it goes, and we'll get into that. But I think it's a close game, and close games always help the over. And so that's my take on if I think the defense will take a step and what I think the offense will be able to do. I think the defense probably plays a bit better than it did the last 2 weeks. Maybe you force a punt or two, small
that'd
improvements.
Be nice.
Yeah, the improvements, very, very tiny at a time, but moving at a snail's pace. But, I don't think that this defense is going to be fixed overnight. I mean, we've said, you said the thing that made me think the other day that we have one defensive playmaker under the age of 30, which is pretty sad. And this team is not just going to force turnovers. Like what we've seen at this point, that this is not a team that forces forced fumbles. They don't get picks. And maybe that'll change throughout the year. Maybe some of that is turnover luck, but I don't have any reason to believe that this team is going to come out and hold Carolina to below, what they've been the last three games, 24, 26, 28. I don't think we're going to do a better job than those three teams did. It'll probably be, 24 plus points from Carolina. Hopefully we can put up the same type of performance, if not better than we did last week offensively.
Yeah. The side of the ball. Mr. Crockpot says, winless for Tibbs.
Tibbs. I haven't thought about his nickname being Tibbs. That's funny.
I'm not ready to go there yet. My first dog was named Tibbs. I think of a little golden retriever puppy. But anyways, onto the offensive side of the ball. Caleb said we need to run the ball more. We talked about that a little bit on the last show. I think, the Carolina cornerback room is not good. This is a team that elected to draft J.C. Horn over a quarterback because their cornerback room was so bad. And now Horn is hurt. I know they traded for Gilmore, but he's on the PUP list, so he's still not eligible to play. He can't play till next week. They traded Henderson, but he was only able to get 18 snaps last week, so they're kind of working him in. So I think you could still see a pretty pass-heavy approach in this game, and I think it makes sense because you're facing, a secondary that doesn't have much besides Jeremy Chin. And so, I think it could make sense to air the ball out again, let Jalen Hurts make some plays. But on the flip side, they've got Ryan Burns and Hassan Reddick off the edge. And so, you want to keep those guys honest, not let them just tee off on, what could be two backup tackles. So, Mailata has the sprained knee. I don't know if he's going to play or not. He was limited in practice, so I would assume Edwards playing, but he's still limited, so he's not 100%. So if we have a limited Jordan Mailata, and then does Lane Johnson play? If Lane Johnson's back, that's great. If he's not, then you're not going to move Dillard to right tackle because that's a disaster. So you're going to have Mailata playing out of position on a sprained knee. And so, the offensive line was fine with a lot of backups against the Cowboys and Chiefs, but they have bad pass rushes, and Carolina doesn't. And so I think it would be, I'm interested to see how they decide to attack this because I think there's arguments on both sides, but I'm still thinking this is going to be a pretty pass-heavy game. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think that there's any reason to expect Nick Sirianni to change his MO from the last couple of weeks. And against this matchup, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, this Panthers cornerback room is going to be good soon when JC Horn's healthy, when Stephon Gilmore's healthy, when they have CJ Henderson fully worked in. But right now, none of the three are playing full-time snaps. Obviously, Gilmore out, Horn out, and Henderson playing, part-time. Mr. Crockbot, where did Hassan Reddick go to college? Shout out to Temple.
Homer in for Temple a little bit.
I mean, I'm not too nervous about this Panthers defense, like I said, and a lot of that is due to the secondary and due to Jeremy Chin being the only good player in that secondary. But Brian Burns is a really good player. They're going to have to figure out some way. I don't know if you double Brian Burns. I don't know if you're able to do that with the backups that we have on the O-line, but Brian Burns is an absolute stud. So that's going to be a guy to watch out for. And hopefully Jalen Hurts is aware of that going into the game and aware of that when he's trying to escape the pocket because Burns is athletic. That's a guy that can chase Hurts down. So that's probably the most impact player on that defense for Carolina while these corners are still out and still working themselves in.
And I think you probably got to get the running backs involved in pass protection quite a bit this week again.
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, what do you think happens in this game, Mark? What's your score prediction?
Yeah, I gave it out a little earlier. I'm going to go 31-30. I'm going to be a homer and say the Eagles win. I think it's really close. I think it's a 50-50 game, and I think that's what Vegas is telling you with it being a 3-point spread now, even after the McCaffrey news. And with Lane Johnson, the question marks around Lane Johnson, the question marks around Mailata, and a lot of the other injuries we have. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with injuries on the O-line, especially, and who plays between Lane, Mailata, and that'll have a huge impact on this game. But I thought that last week and the O-line was pretty good. So maybe the O-line will step up again this week no matter who plays. I'm not sure, but that's the hope. And I'm going to say we win this game in a close one, game-winning field goal.
Game-winning field goal. All right, I'm going to say 31-24 Panthers. If I knew for sure that Lane Johnson was going to play and I knew for sure that Jordan Mailata was going to play, I'd feel better. But I'm not confident in the offensive line against that pass rush, particularly if, Mailata is having to play out of position or if Lane Johnson, doesn't play. A little bit too many unknowns on that side, and I just haven't seen anything from the defense. So the X factors to me are Lane Johnson and Christian McCaffrey. I'd say it's trending towards McCaffrey playing, and it's just up in the air on Johnson. And so I'll give the edge to Carolina.
Yeah, it's totally fair. I think it's as 50-50 as it gets for me. But, if Lane doesn't play, if Mailata doesn't play, it's definitely trending towards Carolina.
Yeah. All right, well, let's throw it around the NFL now. Tonight, we have the Los Angeles Rams coming off a loss, looking to rebound against the Seattle Seahawks. Game is in Seattle. McVay is 6-3 against Pete Carroll so far in his career. How do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, I actually have some stats here because I like the Rams a lot. This is one of my picks this week, and you stole one of them there, but I even shortened it out a little bit. I mean, he's 6-2 in his last 8, McVay, against Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, and he won last year in the playoffs, I believe, with a backup quarterback. I think that was mostly with like John Woodford or I forget what the guy's name was.
I don't remember his name.
John Woodford, something like that. But he was terrible, but the Rams still managed to beat Seattle and Russell Wilson last year in the playoffs. And the Rams are also 8-2 against the spread on the road after a loss with McVay. And they're covering those games by an average of over 10 points. So this is a team that bounces back after losses. This is a team that doesn't stay down for too long, doesn't lose 2 straight games. And this is when I say against the spread, this is a 2-point spread, 2.5, 1.5, wherever you can get it. I got it at -1.5. I love the Rams to win this game, even in Seattle. I think it's kind of an overreaction to Seattle having a big win last week and an overreaction to the Rams having a letdown loss against Arizona last week, which I think that was just an obvious letdown spot after beating Tampa 2 weeks ago and such a big win for the Rams. I think the Rams are the best team in the NFC. I think they bounce back here and handle the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Sidney Jones is a starter tonight for the Seahawks. So, yikes. Matt Stafford didn't play good last week. We talked about he's had those clunker games in his career, but it's never been like a sustained thing. He has a bad game and he bounces back. Seattle is just too inconsistent. I don't trust them at all. And the Rams, I think they're one of the top teams in the NFL. And so I've got them going on the road here and getting the win against Seattle and getting back into this division race.
I agree.
All right, moving on to the London game. We've got the New York Jets against the Falcons in London. And my question is, why do we send the worst teams in the NFL to London? Like, we're trying to cultivate a fan base over there, and you're sending the Jets and the Falcons. Like, that's barely even football.
It's because they fill it out for no matter who goes. I mean, that's why they do it, because they know they might not get a full stadium with one of those teams here. That's why they try to do that with the Jags.
It's like for years they always sent the Jags to London.
Exactly.
Justin chiming in on YouTube saying, hey, or I don't know. I'm not young enough for that, but what's up, Justin? So, yeah, Darnold, he's going to get not Darnold. Man, I'm off today. Zach Wilson is going to get a chance. He's going to get a chance to build on a better performance last week. I wouldn't call it a good performance, but it was a better performance. And it's against the same defense that Taylor Heineke abused last week in the Falcons. They can't get pressure on anybody. I think that probably bodes well for the Jets in that, maybe you can string 2 good games together for Zach Wilson here, and he can start to get a little bit of confidence behind that shaky offensive line. And, maybe he can start to settle in this week. How do you see this one playing out?
I'm going with the Falcons. I'm not too confident here. This is a toss-up game, but Atlanta's a -3-point favorite on a neutral field. I think Atlanta's just got more talent. I think they have a better team. The offense did seem to get going last week. Obviously, the defense didn't, but Zach Wilson is no Taylor Heineke. So I'll go with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I tried to sell myself on it, but at the end of the day, I trust Matt Ryan. I trust the Falcons a little bit more than a whole lot more than I do the Jets, even though, this Falcons team is not good, but the Jets aren't either. I think this is the best chance here for Wilson to kind of hit a stride, and maybe he does, but overall, it's hard to pick the Jets until they prove they can continue to do it.
Get Kyle Pitts the ball. Get him involved.
No kidding. What a waste of a top 5 pick if you're not even going to use him. Another team that could have taken a quarterback, by the way, is Matt Ryan's on his last legs. But
I definitely see it with them, but I still am very bullish on Pitts long term. I still think he's going to be just like it sounds crazy to say right now. I still think he's like a Hall of Fame talent. Like I still think I still think that Kyle Pitts is just on another level talent wise, and I think it'll bear through eventually. And I was wrong. The rookie tight end production historically is bad, and I thought Kyle Pitts would transcend that. Maybe he still will. I mean, he did have one good game, one decent game, and 2 terrible games. So, I mean, they just have to get him involved.
Yeah. I think it's more of a Falcons failure than a Kyle Pitts failure thus far. So
agreed.
Green Bay travels to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. Cincinnati is coming off a long week. They had the Thursday night game against the Jags last week. So I think Cincinnati is better than people realize. But, on the flip side of the coin, I think Green Bay is still a Super Bowl contender. And so I've got Green Bay pretty easily in this one. And we'll see if the most interesting thing for me in this game is if Aaron Rodgers is going to continue to force feed the ball to Randall Cobb in the red zone.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's got some injuries with T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. I even think one of the other, I think Boyd might be banged up too. So they have some injuries that otherwise maybe I would go with an upset, but I actually like the Packers -2.5 here where I got it, and I'm going with Green Bay to win and cover that spread on the road. I agree with you. I think Green Bay is still a Super Bowl contender.
All right, Detroit travels to Minnesota, another divisional matchup here to take on the Vikings. Detroit is 0-4, but I mean, they're better than their record looks. They've been competitive in some games. They just haven't, put one in the win column yet. This isn't a team that I expect to go 0-17 by any stretch of the imagination. Meanwhile, the Vikings are 1-3, and I'd argue they look better than their record too. Their offense has been red hot until they ran into the Browns last week. They just haven't had much of a defense until they ran into Baker Mayfield last week. So apparently the Browns just totally flip everything you're used to. But what do you think? What do you see in this one?
I don't want to see this one. I want to, with all the games at 1:00, with the Eagles playing, with the bets that I'll have all over the board, I'm not touching this game from a gambling perspective. I hope I don't see a second of this game, but I'll go with the Minnesota Vikings. I think they should handle business. Like you said, they're better than their record at 1-3, although they didn't even play that well in their win, which is funny, against Seattle. I felt like Seattle gave them that game. But they had 2 games that they lost where they definitely probably should have won. So just a bizarre team, Minnesota, as always. I forget who they lost to because of a missed field goal. It might have been Arizona, who they took to overtime. And Arizona's a 4-0 team. So that looks it's not like college football, losses. It doesn't really matter if there's good losses or anything like that.
Right.
But losing in overtime on the road to Arizona, who's 4-0, and missing, they lost because they missed a field goal. I forget if that was for the tie or if that was for the win. I can't remember the exact situation there.
I think it was an extra point for the win, if I remember right.
I can't remember. I for some reason my mind is completely blanking on what happened in that Vikings Cardinals game. I had the Cardinals, I know that, and they won. But for some reason I can't remember. But yeah, that was a game that they outplayed Arizona, and they've outplayed a couple teams that they've lost to. I think they get a win here. Detroit has hung tough, and I expect them to hang tough again in this game. This will probably be a back and forth game, but Minnesota really needs to win this game before their season kind of starts tumbling.
They took the Bengals to overtime week 1. Week 2, they scored a touchdown to tie the game against Arizona, but then they missed the extra point and lost in regulation. That's what it was.
Yeah, I got those 2 games kind of mixed up. Yeah. Both of those games they probably should have won.
Yeah, I'm going to take Minnesota as well. They've been right there several times. I mean, they were even close with the Browns, although that was kind of an ugly game. But I think they beat the Lions here. But I do think the Lions are going to pick up a few wins this year,
for sure.
Okay, the next game we've got the Denver Broncos at the Pittsburgh Steelers. As of right now, Teddy Bridgewater is still in the concussion protocol. I don't know if he's going to play or not.
It seems like he is.
Yeah, if he plays versus if he doesn't play, I think is huge in this game because the Steelers defense will feast on Drew Lock if he plays. And so if Bridgewater plays, though, I expect Denver to take care of business in this game. Ben Roethlisberger just doesn't have it anymore. This offense doesn't have it. They're going to have to win with their defense. And I think Bridgewater, he takes care of the ball. He's not going to turn it over a lot versus Locke, who I think would. And so I think Bridgewater is the X factor for this game. And assuming he plays, I like Denver.
I loved Pittsburgh when it seemed like Locke was going to play. Now that it seems like Teddy's going to play, this is a stay away for me. I wouldn't touch this game, but I'll take Pittsburgh just on the off chance Locke plays, because if Locke plays, Pittsburgh wins this game. In my opinion, I don't even think that's like a question to me. If Teddy plays, I think it's as 50-50 as it gets, in my opinion. This game's in Pittsburgh, right?
Yes.
Yeah, then I'll go with Pittsburgh. You got Denver?
Yep, I got Denver on this one.
We got a disagreement there. Let's go.
Although if Bridgewater doesn't play, that's an easy Steelers win in my opinion. But
yeah, for sure.
okay, Miami travels to Tampa Bay. Not a long trip, which is good because it won't be a fun trip for them. Miami still has not had a 200-yard passing game this season. The Buccaneers, I don't know if you know this or not, Mark, but they're putting up a ton of points every week, except in the monsoon against New England, apparently. But I just don't see any way Miami can even really be competitive in this game. Tampa Bay, maybe if they're coming off of the letdown, they go and they win an emotional game for Brady, if you want to try to trump it up that way. But I just don't see it. I think Tampa Bay takes care of business in this one, and they handle the Dolphins pretty easily.
Yeah, I could see this being a game Tampa gets up 21-0 on right away and then just coasts to a 31-7 win. Miami's bad. Jacoby Brissett's bad. Miami's not bad. I shouldn't say that. Jacoby Brissett's bad, and it's making that team play a lot worse, and they have some injuries too. Everything just seems to be going wrong for Miami. It seemed like they didn't play well in week 1 when they beat the Patriots, but it seemed like, oh, wow, this team's going to go to the playoffs if they're going into New England and beating the Patriots, and Tua didn't even play well, and yada, yada, yada. And here we are at 1-3 and looking at 1-4 and with a tough schedule coming up. I wonder if Brian Flores gets on the hot seat. I don't think so. I think people love Flores. People think he's like a great coach. I think he's a good coach too, most of the time. But if this team goes 4-12 with 5-11 or whatever, 5-12, 4-13, with a team that was expected to make the playoffs and expected to compete for the playoffs, I think heads will probably roll.
Yeah, I think getting rid of Flores would be a big mistake for the Dolphins. I think he's a pretty good coach, and I mean, right now he's just hamstrung by bad quarterback play from his starter, and now bad quarterback play from his backup. And I think it's hard to make a lot of decisions about coaching when your quarterback play is just so bad. But yeah,
I think Miami's
expect Tampa to take care of business here.
Yeah, I agree. My bad for cutting in. I think Miami's 2-2 if Tua was playing. I think they win that Raiders game if Tua was playing, just because that was so close and Brissett didn't do anything for 80% of the game. So, not that Tua is amazing, but that is a lot. It's crazy how different 2-2 and 1-3 feels, because you lose to 2-3 and you lose to 1-4. Those are two different losses, and we feel that right now with the Eagles, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, moving on. We've got the New Orleans Saints at the Washington Football Team. This is a battle between a team we know is really bad and a team we're pretty sure is really bad, but every once in a while they have a good game. I mean, New Orleans week 1 kind of looks like an aberration the further we get from it, but Washington, they're just bad. I mean, they beat the Falcons, but that defense is bad. They've got no secondary. I don't even know where to begin with this one.
I love Washington to win this game. I'm riding with Taylor Heineke. I think the Saints are frauds. I think what we saw from them in week 1 was a complete aberration. The Packers, I don't know if they went out in New Orleans. Actually, I don't even think it was in New Orleans. It was in Jacksonville. I don't know what happened. The Packers did not show up ready to play for that game, as we've seen with the last 3 performances from the Packers. And I think it had more to do with Green Bay than it did with New Orleans. I mean, New Orleans won an ugly game against New England. I just don't think that New Orleans is very good. Sean Payton's a really good coach. He made some really weird decisions last week. Then he was giving out yo-yos this week to all his players, saying, "Don't be a yo-yo back and forth team." Like that's I don't know. Sean Payton might be losing his touch a little bit, giving out yo-yos. Maybe it works. Maybe they come out firing. I think Washington's defense will get some pressure on New Orleans, and they'll get some pressure on Jameis, and maybe make Jameis make some bad decisions. But their secondary is obviously like one of the worst in football. And this is my actual favorite bet of the week, over 43.5. It's up to 44.5. Take Washington Football Team overs until the wheels fall off. I mean, it just seems like it's been the best bet in football the last 3 weeks. It's cashed in the second or third quarter. The Saints have not been a high tempo or a fast paced team, but when you have a secondary like Washington, they might not need to be. The concern obviously is, like I've talked about, I feel like a million times on every podcast I've been on, is that the Saints have nothing on the outside at receiver. And that's why I'm going with Washington to win the game. And it makes me a little nervous on the over, but I'm riding with it because I think league average NFL receivers can make plays against this Washington secondary.
Washington's secondary is just so bad, and you've got a quarterback in Jameis Winston that likes to sling the ball. like you said, the receivers aren't great, but I don't think you have to have that good of receiver play to get behind Washington's defense. So I think it really comes down to Taylor Heineke against this New Orleans defense that's been pretty good. And, that the chess match between Sean Payton and Ron Rivera, two coaches that, they've been highly regarded throughout their careers, and they're both kind of struggling right now. But I'm going to take New Orleans in this game on the road. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel good about either side of this game, but I think New Orleans pulls this one out.
That's another disagreement there. I think I've won every time we've went against each other on Washington. You just got eventually you'll convert to the Heineke high.
Maybe so. So, all right, we've got the Tennessee Titans at the Jacksonville Jaguars is the next game. Tennessee dropped an embarrassing game to the Jets last week. There's no way around it. I know Julio didn't play. I know A.J. Brown didn't play. It doesn't matter. You can't lose to the Jets. As of yesterday, Julio was still not participating in practice, but A.J. Brown did. So it looks like he's back. I don't have a line on if Julio is going to play or not. What are you seeing in this one?
Seems like Julio is 50-50 on if he's going to play or not. And Julio it's always tough to tell with him what's going on. It seemed like he was going to play last week. So that's kind of why it was weird when they announced him out. So we'll see what happens with him. I mean, you said Tennessee embarrassed themselves last week. They will embarrass themselves further if they go to Jacksonville and lose with what's going on there with Urban Meyer. With a foot out the door, and the owner putting out statements about him, the owner and the team not trusting him anymore. I'm actually surprised they're letting him coach this game. It seemed like, on Wednesday or Tuesday that, he might get fired, or he might get fired with cause or resign or whatever that may be, come to a buyout. Seems like he's going to coach this game. I can't imagine that they come out ready to play with the distractions that have been going on this week. So I think Tennessee wins the game. I'm leaning towards betting Tennessee in this game. But like you said, I mean, that was an embarrassing loss last week, and it's hard to erase from my brain a little bit. So I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with the receivers. They really just had nothing without Brown and Julio out there last week. And they just had I think Henry got like 35 carries or something crazy. So they can't win like that. You got to be able to throw the ball, and Tannehill's got to be able to make some plays. So that's going to be a big factor in this game, the receivers. But I'll take Tennessee.
Yeah, I like Tennessee as well. With everything going on in if all the distractions weren't there in Jacksonville, I would maybe like them in this game. But I try not to overreact to one game. And Tennessee had an awful game last week, but it was in pretty poor circumstances too. Ultimately, this might be a good game for Trevor Lawrence. Tennessee's defense isn't the best, so I think you could see a good Trevor Lawrence game. But at the end of the day, Tennessee takes this game just because, I mean, who knows? Who knows what Urban Meyer is going to do mid-game? Like, he might just walk off the sideline and go up in the stands and do something.
Take a heart attack.
Yeah, who knows? It's funny. Like, football Twitter unites about nothing. Like, there's just endless bickering on football Twitter. When the Jags were like courting Urban Meyer, football Twitter united and was like, "This is a terrible idea," and the Jags were like, "Nope, we're going to do it anyways." And so I guess what you get from that is, if football Twitter ever unites on something, you should probably listen to them because it's just a dumpster fire in Jacksonville.
So for all you AEW wrestling fans out there who tell me Tony Khan's a genius and he's going to take down WWE and Vince McMahon. Sorry, my wrestling nerd is coming out here, Shane. But you're telling me this guy who hired Urban Meyer, to Tony Khan, by the way, who is the head booker and president of a wrestling company, the president and GM basically of a soccer company in the EPL, Fulham, that I believe got relegated because they came in last place. And they also own the Jaguars, and he's the vice president of football operations. And you're telling me this guy's like the GM for a soccer team, basically the GM for a football team, and running a wrestling company at the same time. It makes a lot of sense why you would be mistaken and hire a guy like Urban Meyer, who's not going to be able to devote his full time to being an NFL coach, or wanting to devote his full time to being an NFL coach. I'm out on the Khan family. So I'm biased here against the Jaguars, and I'm mad that they're ruining Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, he'll be fine. He will next year. Meyer will be gone by Halloween. So
for sure.
From one dumpster fire to another, New England travels to Houston to play the Texans. The Texans have scored 9 points in the last 2 weeks combined. Bill Belichick is great against rookie quarterbacks, and Davis Mill is bad against everyone. So, I mean, the spread is 9 right now, and it's always a little scary taking spreads that are bigger than a touchdown because you get into garbage time. But this seems like an easiest bet in the world to me.
It's scary because I like every favorite besides Washington. Like every team I like is favored this week. I only have 2 underdogs I think on the board that I like, and it scares me. But this line can't be big enough for me to bet Houston. I mean, how could you confidently bet Davis Mills? I don't even think New England's offense is that good, so maybe I wouldn't lay the 9 just because I could see this being like a 17-10 game or like I don't know 17-8. Like I don't know what happens, but I just don't think New England's offense is good enough to lay the 9, and I don't think I'd take 20 with Houston. So this is a stay away from me, but New England should win easily.
Yeah, you need to go tease this one down to a 3-point spread, and
that's true.
Take that one.
That you could do.
Okay, well, there's, like I said, not much to talk about in that one, but let's move on to another one. We've got Chicago Bears traveling to Las Vegas to take the Raiders, and much to Matt Nagy's chagrin, Justin Fields is the starter for the season now. Bill Lazor is the play caller, and Nagy hates both of those things. But injury report-wise, Khalil Mack and Akeem Hicks were both out yesterday for the Bears in practice, which could play a big role. And then on the offensive side, the Bears' offensive line is just they're very, very, they've done really bad all season, very porous. And the Raiders have what's been a dominant pass rush so far this season. How do you see this one playing out?
They're also missing David Montgomery, the running back who got hurt he's going to be missing a month or so. So that's huge for Chicago. This is a huge game for both of these teams. I mean, we're shocked that Chicago is sitting at 2-2, and you win this game and you're 3-2, and the schedule softens up a little bit. You still have 2 Detroit games, or I know they played Detroit once, but you still have some easy games left on the schedule, and you have Justin Fields. Maybe things start rolling in the right direction in Chicago if you can get a win here. No, they're on the road, but as an underdog. But the Raiders is a huge game for them too. Are you going to be the same old Raiders that start out hot and then fade down the stretch and lose to bad teams and play up and down to competition? I'm interested to see what happens in this game. I mean, this could be a split crowd too out there in Vegas, Chicago. This could be kind of like their vacation game. I know the Eagles take over LA Stadium, and they're probably going to try to with Vegas this year when they play them. But this is going to be a close game, in my opinion. Not a game I would touch the spread on. I think the Raiders are around 5.5 point favorites. Close game. I'll take the Raiders to win because Derek Carr, I think, bounces back after he played really well in the second half, but after a bad first half against the Chargers, and the Chargers look like a really good defense. I'm not sure that the Bears are quite as good defensively as the Chargers. So I'll lean on the Raiders here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Raiders, I don't fully trust him yet, but I trust him more than I trust the Bears, even with Justin Fields playing, even with the new play caller. That offensive line really concerns me against the Raiders' defensive front. And then the fact they might be missing their 2 best pass rushers on defense. To me, this is a Las Vegas game. But, personally, I hope to see a good game out of Justin Fields. He's a guy that I really liked going into the draft, and I want to see him succeed in the league. So I'm hoping for a good Justin Fields game, but I think the Raiders walk out with this one.
It seems like Sunday's going to be a chance for these kind of we'll touch on that in a second, that comment. But it seems like Sunday's going to be a chance for a lot of the rookie quarterbacks to kind of change the narrative a little bit, or at least do a little, improve. Zach Wilson, like you talked about, against the bad Falcons defense. Justin Fields, like we just talked about, the Raiders are not the scariest defense in the world, so he should be able to step up. Trevor Lawrence against Tennessee should be able to step up. And then another rookie that we'll get to in one of the coming games that's also starting for his team. So, and Mac Jones also playing the Houston defense. So all these rookies have a chance to have a really good week this week.
Yeah, we got Andrew chiming in on YouTube, says they just traded for the best corner in the league. The Eagles are in deep. Assuming he's talking about Gilmore with the Panthers. But we mentioned this earlier. Gilmore started the year on the PUP list, so he actually is ineligible to play this week. He can make his debut in week 7 for the Panthers, so we don't have to worry about him.
Which is good.
Yeah, which is good. So let's keep it rolling along here. We got the Cleveland Browns traveling to LA to take over or to play the Chargers, to take over the Chargers Stadium because the Chargers don't have any fans out there, which has got to be depressing to actually be a legitimately good team, maybe a Super Bowl contender, and you play every home game in front of a crowd that boos you. But I digress. Baker Mayfield has a shoulder injury in his non-throwing shoulder. He's coming off of a bad week. Running into a Chargers defense is pretty good. What do you make of this one, Mark?
This is going to be a great game. I don't know what's on national TV at 4:00. I haven't checked out what games we'll be getting, and two really good games, and then another one that has two big teams in it and two big names in it. So I'm curious if this game's going to be on TV, but I'd actually love to just watch this entire game between the Browns and Chargers. Two defenses that have really impressed me early on and so far in this year. Maybe this is an under you look at. I'm not someone who takes a lot of unders, and I actually don't even know where that's at right now.
47.5.
47.5. That's interesting. Maybe first half under, maybe a Chargers team total under. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm going to workshop that a little bit, check out the numbers and crunch them a little bit. But the Browns defense is, in my opinion, the best in football. The Chargers look like a top 5, top 10 defense at worst. Holding the Raiders, who I believe Derek Carr was averaging over 400 passing yards per game, and they held him to 14 points last week. So that's really impressive. Like you said, though, I think it's really important to talk about this home field advantage thing. Like, this is a team that, like you said, has Super Bowl aspirations, and I guess the hope is that Justin Herbert turns into a Patrick Mahomes-like player that just captivates the city and gets all these new fans. And I don't know if that's going to happen, but I guess that's the hope. But it's a mess. And the fact that you look at their schedule, I mean, they have teams like New England, Chicago, New York, all these teams with huge fan bases that are going to come in and take over the stadium. Cleveland this week, I think they'll travel well enough, and it's at least going to be a 50-50 crowd. Justin Herbert was holding his ears last week, and the LA media was giving him crap for it. And it's like, yeah, sorry that we don't have a home field. And that's why maybe they are better on the road. They're able to go into Kansas City and win on the road. I don't know how long that can keep up, or if they even have a home field advantage, and how that'll affect them in the playoffs, really. But that'll be a really interesting thing to watch for going forward. I'm taking Cleveland because I think they're a top 3 team in football, or at least top 5, and I think they have the best defense in football. Baker Mayfield makes me nervous at all times when betting on Cleveland, but you have to love everything else about that team.
Yeah, they both got a great defense. I mean, the Chargers, they locked down the Chiefs as much as anybody's going to lock down the Chiefs. The Browns are just playing phenomenal. I think the Chargers have a definite QB advantage, and Cleveland has a definite rushing game advantage. They both got good defenses, but I think Cleveland's is just better. They've only allowed 302 yards and 13 points in the last 2 games combined. And so I've got Cleveland in this game. You know, Baker Mayfield could screw that up if he plays as poorly as he did last week. But right now I like the Browns.
Yeah, I'm in there with you. Baker's definitely what you have to worry about.
All right, moving on to a NFC East matchup between the New York Giants traveling to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. This Cowboys team is a team that's looking more and more like they could make a deep playoff run. We talked about that in our recap show. Their defense seems to be coming together. They got a lot of guys injured that are, slowly going to start trickling back in, but this offense is just on fire. I don't see any way that the Giants are able to slow this offense down. They may be able to score. They may be able to run the ball with Saquon. I just don't see how they can keep up with the Dallas offense. So I've got Dallas winning this one.
Yeah, I agree. And this will be a big test for Daniel Jones. I'm curious if Daniel Jones continues to do what he's been doing. Dallas defense has been vulnerable, but it also has improved a lot so far this year. So I'm curious to see what the Giants are able to do offensively. I like Dallas to win, and I'm trending towards probably betting them this weekend, but Dallas should handle this game pretty easily.
All right. San Francisco 49ers at the Arizona Cardinals. 49ers quarterback situation is still a little uncertain. Jimmy G, it sounded like was weeks. Now it sounds like he could play. It's kind of gone back and forth here. But regardless, their secondary is still banged up. Arizona is going to exploit that 49ers secondary with their wide receiver room. I think for the situation, it's favorable for the Cardinals. You either are going to have Jimmy G playing a little bit gimpy, or you're going to have, Trey Lance making his first NFL start. And he looked a little shaky when he came in last week. And so I like Trey Lance long-term as a prospect. I don't like him as a starter for the first time against an undefeated Cardinals team.
I really want to take San Fran. Like I kind of believe in them in this spot, and especially if Trey Lance starts, and I do think there's a chance this is kind of like a, welcome to the NFL Trey Lance performance. He has like kind of that Kaepernick breakout performance that he had in his first big start. I just can't, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to pick Arizona to win. San Fran could definitely cover. I hope it's Trey Lance to play just in terms of entertainment factor watching this game. And I thought that even with Trey Lance looking shaky, I thought he brought a different aspect to the offense, and the Jimmy G offense in the first half when he was playing, I thought was dreadful. So I think that it's good to get Trey Lance in there and going.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Buffalo Bills at the Kansas City Chiefs. I was trying to look at a line for this game.
I think it's around 2.5 or 3.
Okay. Oh, I scrolled down too far. I've scrolled into next week's. Okay. Right now, the Chiefs are -3 in this game. Over-under is at 56.5. The Chiefs is at DEFCON 1. When you let a team that had struggled against, they just come into up to the tune of 30 points. Like that. Chiefs defense is not good. Meanwhile, an average of 33 points. Now, granted, they haven't played a good team in that time. They've played Miami, they've played Washington and Houston, but I just feel like the Bills are a more complete team. I like Mahomes better. I like the Chiefs offense better than the Bills, but the Chiefs just don't have a defense anywhere to be found. And I think the Bills have a pretty good defense. So I'm taking the Bills in this one. In a game of the week here, a game that I'm really looking forward to watching on Sunday night.
I'm taking the Chiefs. I don't think if there might be a game this year where I pick against the Chiefs. I just always think they're going to win, and that's probably a flaw. But I think that Buffalo, I mean, every move Buffalo has made has been to play against Kansas City, obviously adding Rousseau, adding Basham, Epineza last year, and adding the corners they did and the help they did in the secondary. Everything they're doing is to gear up for a game against Kansas City. And if this game was in Buffalo, I'd probably be all about picking Buffalo. But Kansas City has absolutely owned Buffalo and has owned Josh Allen and Sean McDermott. So I'm going to bet on them to continue doing that. And I think I will be betting on the Chiefs on Sunday night. So I'll take the Chiefs to win. And I think Mahomes has a big night. And Buffalo's defense, which has kind of been vaunted over the last couple of weeks, I think it takes a step back here against Kansas City.
All right. And then on to the Monday night game. We have the Indianapolis Colts at the Baltimore Ravens. Not a very exciting Monday night game, in my opinion. Indy picked up their first win over the woeful Dolphins last week. They head into Baltimore, where Lamar is coming off his first 300-yard game of the season, where he's really doing it all by himself. If you watch these games, he's got nothing working with him here. His offensive line's banged up. He's got no running backs, and his receivers were all hurt, if he even had good receivers to begin with. And so, you see in this game a quarterback who can't do it by himself in Carson Wentz, and a quarterback who can in Lamar Jackson. And I think Baltimore cakewalks through this game.
I agree. I don't have much to say. We hope they lose, I guess. I guess we kind of hope Indy wins, but I think Baltimore wins this game, even without the help that Lamar Jackson sorely needs to compete in the AFC, in my opinion. But I think they win this game, and I think they win it pretty easily.
Yeah, it's a fine line as an Eagles fan with that Colts second-round conditional pick on, like, do you want them to win or lose? Because you want them to win just enough games that Wentz will play, 75% of the snaps. You don't want them to bench him at the end and make sure they keep their first or whatever, but you want them to lose as many as possible so that pick is high. So I don't even know what to root for here, but I don't think it really matters what I root for. I think Baltimore will walk away with it.
Agreed.
All right. Well, if that is going to about wrap it up, the Week 5 slate, maybe not as many exciting games in this slate as some of the previous weeks, but there's a few really good games that I'm really looking forward to, particularly that Sunday night game. I can't wait to watch the Chiefs and the Bills duke it out. And then, you've got the Browns in a big game too against the Chargers. And so 2 huge showdowns, Clash of the Titans in the AFC. So I'm looking forward to that. But Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts for us today?
Yeah, I came up with this on the spot right now as we're talking. The fact that we're putting, we're putting 8 1:00 games and 4 4:00 games is ridiculous. Why not just make it 6 and 6? It makes no sense to me. I've never understood it. Sometimes it'll be 10 and 3. At least we have the 9:30 game. I actually really like that. You wake up, there's a game on, and I like that it's 2 bad teams. It's not too important. You throw it in there while you're preparing for the Sunday, and I love the way they have that, planned out with the 9:30 game. Make it even between 1:00 and 4:00. This was on this. I didn't think this through too much, but that's like a constant complaint of mine every single year.
Yeah, I'd love that, especially because it's hard for me to get in. It's hard for me to get back for the 1:00 games. It's noon my time, and so it gets difficult. I end up missing most of the first quarter of those games, and I've got to go back and watch them later. But I want to watch the games live, and so I always love when the Eagles hit those 4:00 or the 4:25 games instead of the 1:00 games. So I am wholly in favor. NFL, do us a favor. Next year when you make the schedule, split these games up evenly. We would be eternally grateful.
And it's just like the 1:00 red zone. You're literally missing 3 to 4 games that are going on. Like they're just not showing 3 to 4 games. And then the 4:00 red zone is like you're watching every single play basically from like 1 or 2 close games. So it just makes no sense. Space it out better. It's pretty easy to do this.
Yeah, I co-sign. So Chalk Talk, you heard it here first. We want the schedule to be rebalanced. Come on, NFL, do us a favor. So, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us for episode number 15 of Chalk Talk. Whether you listened live, you're listening later, if you enjoy what you heard on the show, be sure and smash the subscribe button wherever you're listening. Drop us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It would really help us out. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handles are right here on the screen. I'm at half and half TPL. He's at Mark Henry Jr. _. So from me, from Mark, from the Painted Lines, we'll see you guys next time.